Hey everyone, welcome to the Purple People podcast. I'm drunk, and alongside me, as always, is Adam Carlson. What's up, Adam?
Hi there, I'd like to welcome everyone to episode 49 of the Purple People podcast. This episode is entitled Baca to the Future.
Ah, I am a big fan of that. We should have did this one on May the 4th if I would have known you were gonna have that for the subtitle for the show.
There's no way to know until it's time. I'm a sneaky one like that.
Indeed,
But
you are.
I hear that we have a question from social media.
We have a social media question of the week. This one comes from at Alex Lawson 91. This was from our Twitter account. He
Kind of
wants
weird his mom would name him that, but alright.
Yeah, he wants to know which undrafted free agent wide receiver has the best chance of making the team.
Oh, come on, this isn't even fair.
I know who you're going to go for. Are you going for Rodney Smith?
Of course.
Yeah, Rodney Smith is the guy that I pulled up too. But I had first learned of him from Mr. Adam Carlson, who did a good job of selling me on the prospect of him. So I'm just going to go ahead and say the floor is yours. Why don't you sell all of our viewers on Rodney Smith?
Here's what I love about Rodney Smith. He's got height, he's got speed, he's got hands, he's familiar with the quarterback since he was playing with Ponder at Florida State. He's got everything you look for in a wide receiver. I was really surprised at this draft when he was not taken in round 6 or 7 because he was kind of an under the radar guy. His stats weren't excessive, but he was one of those players that I think could develop into a really, really solid number 3, number 4, number 5 guy, and I really hope he makes the roster.
Me too. He is a definite strong contender, I think, for the practice squad. If he doesn't make the final roster, he'll get that. And I wouldn't be surprised if they do try to slide him on the practice squad if some other receiver needy team would happen to snag him out from underneath us. I like him a bit too. I've got his his height and weight. He's 6'4", 225. So
Yes.
he's being a pretty big bodied guy here too. That's what I like. Now I know Alex was probably wondering, just by the wording of the question and the very specific nature of undrafted free agent wide receiver, if we were going to go with Duron Carter. And we can kind of reiterate that he's a big time long shot to make the team, and I don't think we'll be seeing Duron in purple on a full
Well,
time basis anytime soon.
the absolute easiest answer to his question would have been Adam Thielen from Minnesota State Mankato, because the Vikings did sign him.
Mm-hmm.
So that probably would have been the safe pick, but I think that when they narrow it down, Rodney might be the guy that takes over for him.
It'd be a fun battle. This is my favorite part of preseason football, and the absolute reason why I don't want the NFL to cut the preseason games down from 4 games to 2 games. It's battles like this. It's seeing a
Yes,
guy like Rodney Smith. It's like, can he get out there during preseason and can he win a roster spot? And I am so excited for this to happen. I can't wait. I love watching those battles and dissecting players and seeing who's going to make the 53 and who's going to make the practice squad. It's just so much fun.
exactly. Before we get into doing the draft picks, I'd like to finish up with my signed and released so that we can end with the draft picks and it'll be nice smooth sailing.
Okay.
The Vikings also signed former Cardinals tackle Brandon Keith.
Hmm.
He is in no danger of taking a starting job from anybody, and he may even be better moved inside. He's most likely just a camp body, even though the Vikings do need depth at tackle.
Yeah, I heard that signing too, and yeah, I thought the same thing that you did. That's a competition at training camp kind of signing right there.
Yes. We had a player signed and released, and that was Nicholas Edwards. That happened within the last week. Poor guy. Although he made $5,000 in the meantime, so I guess he can't really complain about that too much.
I'm actually a little confused on how that works because our punter, not Chris Cluey, but the other punter that we had signed way
Who
back,
we will discuss later.
yeah, at the beginning of the off season, uh, someone had like tweeted to him saying, I, well, at least you got money for, signing with the Vikings and you didn't even really have to do anything. And he replied back that, like, well, that's not exactly how that works. So I'm a little confused now on, whether or not a player who signs with a team and doesn't do anything, do they really get that money or not? I don't quite know how that works.
And the Vikings had one other minor release in punter Chris Cluey.
Yeah, minor release. Thanks, Adam. Way to jab that in there.
Rather than read through the list of all the undrafted free agents, there is a list on our Facebook page. Be sure to check it out. Some of the names to watch for on the list: Rodney Smith, as we mentioned, Zach Line, the fullback. He's a guy that the Vikings seem very interested in. Other than that, I don't see a lot of names that really stand out at me. But if there are some that appeal to you, make sure to drop us a line on Facebook or Twitter. Tell us who you like and why.
Well, there's one I gotta mention for all my Hawkeye fans out there. James Vandenberg, the quarterback, the former Iowa Hawkeye quarterback, signed.
Vanderbeek.
What was that?
James Vanderbeek.
Yeah, he signed with Minnesota Vikings, and competition for Christian Ponder? No, definitely not. As a Hawkeye fan, I will tell you that first and foremost. This competition for McLeod Bethel Thompson, that McLeod Bethel Thompson should pretty easily be able to win out.
Yeah, I wouldn't be too scared
Yeah, no,
if I were any of them.
we're pretty glad to get rid of him, and here in Hawkeye Nation.
And that sums up the releases and ads for the Vikings this week.
Hmm.
And now we can get into talking about the Vikings draft picks.
Yes, let's finish off. You guys listened to last week's show, which you should have. We talked about our 3 first-round draft picks,
Yes.
and this week we're going to continue on, and our next pick was in the 4th round, where we grabbed Gerald Hodges.
Yes. Gerald Hodges, he's an outside linebacker who we might see start on day one if Aaron Henderson is named the starting middle linebacker.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Gerald Hodges has already claimed the number 54 jersey. He was a former high school quarterback and he turned safety when he went to college. Then, when he was there at college, they moved him into an outside linebacker position. Fun fact about him is that he was a very successful high school wrestler. As a junior, he went 40-1.
Which
One
is
of his
in,
major strengths is that he has quick feet and active hands, which sure had to have helped him when he was doing the wrestling.
uh-huh.
That helps him defend passes very well.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that being having a wrestling background like that he's gonna be a very physical player, and he's gonna have good, like you said, lower body movement, which is definitely really important.
One noted weakness that has been noticed is that he does seem to bite on misdirection a little too often, and he has trouble getting around blocks sometimes. But I feel that the coaching staff will be able to talk to him and get that all together and get that worked out.
Hmm. They can work with him and improve the technique. That's why these guys are pros at what they do.
Yeah, he's got the speed and the ability to bring ball carriers down in space or even in traffic. His most impressive trait is his ability to cover, and you could tell that the Vikings took that seriously when they took Xavier Rhodes with their
Hmm.
first round pick,
Hmm.
and now solidifying the defense even more. The one major area where Hodges needs to improve is disengaging from blocks, but like I said, I'm sure that'll get worked on.
Happened. The Vikings have had pretty good luck in, you know, later rounds with 4th round picks who actually end up developing into solid starters. I don't remember precisely where he was drafted, but I know our center John Sullivan was a mid-round 4th or 5th round draft pick, wasn't he, Adam?
Yeah, I want to say a fifth rounder, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I wanted to say he was either 4th or 5th, but like I said, he's a player that they developed into. Well, he's our starting center on the team. So don't sleep on Gerald Hodges, people. That's what I'm trying to say.
And that's all I have on him.
Okay, and then we're gonna move on to our 5th round pick, the pick that pisses me off, uh, our punter Jeff Locke. Adam, why don't you go ahead and talk about Mr. Locke?
Jeff Locke is such an intriguing prospect. He is a left-footed punter, which makes things look very different from a receiving point of view. Uh, if you are familiar with NFL analyst Gil Brandt, he is one of the most respected. He says that he's every bit as good as Brian Anger, who was selected by the Jaguars in round 3 last year.
Hmm.
He possesses a strong and accurate leg, which is exactly what you look for in a punter. He can be the backup field goal kicker. He can act as a holder. He can do it all, ladies and gentlemen. He
But
even
he's
handled kickoffs and led the nation in touchbacks.
but he's not Chris Cluey, and to the best of my knowledge, he doesn't play Warcraft. So that's two big strikes against him. And I don't believe he's in Tripping Icarus either, so that's another strike. And no, I'm kidding here. Actually, if this is a solid like football maneuver, I've had way too much to drink to be doing this podcast. Um, if this was like a strict football maneuver on the part of the Minnesota Vikings, then it was a solid draft pick because
Well,
Cluey has been with the team for what 9 or 10 seasons now,
yeah,
starting
7.5, I believe, or is it 8.5? Something like that.
8 or 9. He was starting to his numbers were starting to slip. He'd been dropping a little bit, so I understand the decision for the team wanting to replace him. I still don't like it because Cluey was one of my favorite players on the team. I didn't want to see him go, and I do believe that if he does get picked up by another team, he's still going to be one of the better punters in the NFL. But I get why the Vikings wanted to you know get someone else in there on the team.
Yeah, if you read my article, I currently write for the Viking Age, which you may be listening to this on because we have been added there. Hint, hint.
Hmm.
But you will have known that although I like Chris Cluey, I do, and I've interacted with him on Twitter on many occasions. He just is an average kicker who was making too much money. I don't think it was anything to do with politics. I don't think it was anything to do with anything else. I just think that was the case.
Well, I do think part of this has to do with a little bit of politics. I think if you read between the lines, I've heard I follow some of the other guys in Tripping Icarus who have kind of tweeted out that Cluey and Prefer, the team's special teams coach, don't see eye to eye on pretty much anything like politically wise. And we know how much Prefer has to say when it comes to the special teams. They value him, and rightfully so. You kind of got to wonder a little bit if that was like his way of saying, well, Cluey's numbers were down, so let's go ahead and replace him now. But that's how much you want to read into that, I don't know. We're gonna view it more of like a football maneuver and say that yeah, it was a good decision on the Vikings' part.
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it. I don't buy into the other stuff.
Yeah,
But getting back to Jeff Locke, let's talk about him a little more. I haven't found any weaknesses in his game on tape at all. Some interesting information about him is that he was born in 1989 in Frankfurt, Germany.
oh, I didn't know that.
The athlete he admires the most is punter Daniel Sepulveda.
It should be Chris Cluey. That's what he should say.
His hobbies include hanging out with friends and video games.
Oh well, there we go. He's a gamer too. He's already yeah, well, working his way into the hearts of Minnesota fans. Um,
Definitely.
the
The
one thing.
bottom line that I have on Jeff Locke is that he will be a day one starter now that Chris Cluey's been released.
Oh,
He has that awesome combination of power and accuracy. Like I said, he can kick off, he can hold, he can be the backup kicker. He
mhm.
currently wears the number 12, but I'm guessing that he might take Cluey's number 5.
I would actually kind of like it if Percy Harvin's number went to the next punter of the Minnesota Vikings. That would that would amuse me, quite frankly, quite a bit. The one thing my note that I had about Jeff Locke that I wanted to mention is like you said, I love players who are versatile and who can do multiple things, and he can do kickoffs as well. Now we obviously know we got Blair Walsh, so we don't need him to do that. But on the chance that Blair Walsh slips and falls and breaks his leg, Jeff Locke can step in and he can do that as well for the Minnesota Vikings. So I like the versatility that he brings to the team.
It's crazy all the things he can do with kickoffs, field goals, holding, punting. He brings a lot of versatility.
Okay, let's move on from Jeff Locke and go to the Viking sixth round draft pick, Chewbacca, as I like to call him, Mr. Jeff Baca.
Yep, Jeff Baca. He's a guard from UCLA, 6'3", 302 pounds. He is not the biggest guy that you'd like to see for an offensive lineman, but he is tenacious. He's able to push defensive tackles back in protection. He recognizes blitzes well and is able to redirect them. He helps out a lot in pass protection. He's good at pulling. He is aggressive in the run block. This is a guy that Charlie Johnson and Brandon Fusco should be looking at and saying he might take our jobs.
Hmm. Do you think that Jeff Baca is sort of like Jeff Schwartz was?
Well, I don't see Jeff Baca being able to play tackle,
Hmm.
but I do see him as being a more aggressive version
Okay.
of Jeff Schwartz. So yeah, I can see what you're saying there.
Hmm.
Now, although Baca's managed to have 45 career starts and 25 of them came at guard and 20 at tackle, I don't see him going out there at all. He chose to wear number 60 for the Minnesota Vikings, which is a good number. I like it, especially since his Twitter account already had the number 60 on it.
Oh yeah, I'm glad you said Twitter. You just reminded me of my words of wisdom that I'm going to throw into the conversation here is that he's already apparently like right at home with the Minnesota Vikings because it was a day after he got drafted by the team. He's already tweeting out wanting to know where the best places to go hunting and fishing in Minnesota are. So here's a guy who's going to fit right in with the locker room, like right in with Jared Allen and all those guys. So he'll have no problem in this locker room.
I've been told, based on appearances only, that I could be mistaken for Jeff Baca's cousin or brother.
Oh, no kidding. I'm gonna have to Google search because I haven't really seen quite what he
Although
looks
I've been
like.
told that it hasn't happened, but
Yeah.
we're not family. But hey, who knows? Why not, right?
Yeah, because you're
He's
related to our tight end on the team, right?
no, no, no,
You sure you're not? You and John Carlson aren't blood relation?
no. I'll just call him my friend that he doesn't know yet.
Your brother from another mother?
That's right.
Okay, let's move on to our triple threat of seventh round draft picks that we have. And I'm going to let you go ahead and pronounce this next guy's name because I'll just butcher it anyway.
Michael Mauti.
Mauti?
I say Mauti.
Mauti?
But he is one of the really interesting guys in this draft because if he didn't have the ACL injuries that he had, he would have been a solid second, third round draft pick. This is the guy that the Vikings were willing to take a flyer on late that if he can prove to stay healthy at the pro level, he could develop into a starter at middle linebacker and he could be one of the better players in the league.
Yeah, and let's not forget, Minnesota knows a thing or two about rehabbing those ACL injuries. Because obviously Adrian Peterson, but what some people might not remember is that Chad Greenway had an ACL injury as well too, and he came
True.
back to be the awesome, rock solid player that Chad Greenway is on the team. So I believe that he's coming into a really good medical staff that will treat him correctly and get him into top-notch form. And within a couple years, you're going to be going, I can't believe that the Vikings drafted him in the seventh round. Like, I think his stock will rise heartily for the Minnesota Vikings.
Now, Michael Mauti, he's a secure tackler, great instincts, good at changing directions, good in pass coverage. He's a leader when he's on the field and off the field. When he got injured in 2011, he spent his time coaching up the younger defensive players, just trying to make sure that they knew what was going on. And that says a lot for a player's character.
Hmm.
Another good character thing about him is, although he couldn't finish his senior year, Mauti sent a letter to all 32 NFL general managers explaining his love for the game and why he wants to play in the NFL.
Man, that's great. You notice there's a theme that Rick Spielman does when he drafts players, is he gets guys who love football. Like there's none of this like bad attitude and doing it for the money kind of thing. Like he gets guys who want to go out there and they want to play football. And even someone like Greg Childs gets injured but spends the entire time in Minnesota rehabbing to get back out there because he wants to play the game. And
Right.
here's another guy who just like you said he loves football and wants to get out there and play. And those are the kind of guys that you want to have in the locker room.
Exactly. Although he doesn't have a ton of straight line speed, the Minnesota's defense will be able to help that out by having a strong defensive line,
Hmm.
and that's a nice thing. He's extremely intuitive and instinctual, and he chose the jersey number 56.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that when you're drafting a guy in the seventh round, you're not drafting a starter. You're drafting a guy who's going to sit around and spend some time to learn the position.
Well, the nice thing too is that if he is healthy, they will have a competition for middle linebacker.
Oh, totally.
And who knows? You never know what could happen.
Hmm.
But I'm just saying that I wouldn't hold my breath on it right now because he may enter the season on IR.
Hmm. Okay, now we got to move on to Travis Bond, who
Bond.
Travis Bond, who might possibly be the funniest player that we drafted. I don't know if you heard him talk. We'll get to that in a minute. But why don't you give us his credentials here first, Adam?
Travis Bond is a really interesting guard that they drafted. He has struggled with weight all his life, but he is 6'6" and he has the nickname Treetop.
Yeah, treetop.
Now, during when he was in high school or when he was in college at North Carolina, his weight ballooned to 372 pounds,
Hmm.
but he dropped his weight to 330 for his senior year. So it shows that he has the discipline when needed to take care of business. He's a
Yeah,
tall, long lineman with good mobility for his size, quick feet, and a powerful blocker. But his height is a disadvantage because he has trouble getting low because he bends at the waist sometimes and uses his pads to push away.
hmm
So he's inconsistent and he's sometimes slow to react, but he is a massive man who will be competing in camp for a job.
he's an offensive guard who, by all rights, looks like a defensive tackle just on size alone. Uh,
Huge gentleman.
yeah,
Huge.
very big. Travis Bond, we just gotta. If you guys haven't, after you get done listening to the show, go to Vikings.com and click down through audio interviews and listen to Travis Bond talk about getting hit by a truck. It it is like the funniest thing you've ever heard. He was on his way to class when he was in college. He's riding a scooter, and someone swerves over into his lane and hits him. And being such a big gentleman as he is, he dented the vehicle and was able to basically just get back up and just like stare at the driver. And the driver drove off. And he just gets back on his scooter and drives to class and had to explain to his teacher that he got hit and that's the reason why he was late. Didn't realize that he broke his wrist until a couple days later. He's working out and he's benching like 300 plus odd pounds. And God, his wrist doesn't really feel right. And he finally goes in and get x-rays and realizes that it's broken. It's legitimately a really funny story. And he talks about the weight loss and the reason why he said that he had ballooned up to such a big size is that he had lived close enough to where his mother and grandmother were still cooking for him,
Oh no.
and he goes through the list of all the foods he had to give up, including macaroni and cheese and barbecue grill, and he just goes off on all the list of all the things that he had to give up, and it's really funny, and you have to listen to that interview.
The last bit of information I have on Travis Bond is that he'll wear the number 76 in camp.
Yeah, and I'm pulling for him to make the team just based on personality alone.
Yeah, he's going to be an interesting guy to watch. He might be one of the guys they stash away on the practice squad.
Yep. Okay, then we're gonna close out the draft with our final seventh round selection. There was a defensive tackle, Everett Dawkins from Florida State.
Yeah, Everett Dawkins is an interesting guy. He he's a project, but he's got the speed and the high motor to where he could develop into being an excellent player. He's got that quick step. He's got low center of gravity and quick feet, but he lacks control and consistency. He's one of those guys that's going to need a lot of coaching to really develop into a player.
Mm-hmm.
But if the right coaching staff can get a hold of him and develop him, he is a talent, and he is a guy that could one day develop into a heavy rotational guy or even possibly a starter.
And well, I believe that we've got the right coaching staff in place to take care of late round prospects like that. So, and
That's one thing I'm really excited about is how the Vikings went out and they've got this young team and they know who they're planning on keeping immediately. So they bring in all these other guys to compete. And they've got a lot of project guys so they can see, okay, we've got this position settled down. Like they know right now that they already have defensive tackles who are going to start. Evan Dawkins is not going to be one of the guys
hmm
that you're going to see playing in games this year. But he's a guy that they can look at and say, okay, we can stash him away. And Kevin Williams is retiring, or we might not be able to hold on to Latroy Guion, something like that.
or you
It's
look
one
at
of
it and you go someone like Christian Ballard, who has been kind of just another guy on the team at this point.
right,
Is Everett coming into training camp? Is he going to flash more than what Christian Ballard is going to do at this point? You never know. It's good competition for Ballard to have.
absolutely,
hmm
and that's exactly what I'm talking about. In this draft, I saw the Vikings take chances early on and get their starters. They moved up. They packaged a lot of their picks back into the first round. They got Patterson. With their 3 first-round picks, they knew that they had some solid players.
Mm,
Then later on, that made it so that they're able to take gambles on guys like Maudy or Dawkins or Bond, players like that that might need a little more time to develop, but now they have that ability to since they've got all everything else in place.
hmm Overall, and I know it's really early because we haven't even seen these guys in pads yet, but kind of what do you think of the Vikings draft as a whole, Adam?
When I look at it as a whole, um, I graded the first 3 rounds. I gave an A minus, or the first 3 picks,
hmm
sorry, which I guess is the first 3 rounds anyway.
Yeah.
But for the rest of the draft, I thought they did a solid job, not excellent, so I'm gonna go with a B there. So I'm gonna round it out to a B plus draft. I really enjoyed what they did. They didn't take a lot of crazy choices. They didn't go for players they didn't need at reaching.
hmm
They didn't go for weird positions that they didn't exactly go bananas for. I don't know. But to me, I was really happy. This is a solid draft and one that Vikings fans should be able to look back on and say, hey, this was another winner.
Yeah, I hear you, and we'll see how this shakes out, and a couple years down the line when you can look back and see how the full class actually played out for the team. But right now, I liked it, and I thought they were aggressive where they needed to be aggressive in the first round. They were able to fill positions of need. They were able to make upgrades at spots where upgrades were needed to be done, and I'm talking about the punter spot right there. And I liked what they did for sure. Like you said, they brought in some guys who will be in good depth and good competition for the squad, and that's the benefit of having a young roster that you can continually bring in. You can take chances on later round guys like that because you're not counting on getting a starter in the seventh round because you're the Cleveland Browns and you're a horrible team and you need starters
Right.
all over the board. You know what I'm saying?
right? This isn't one of those teams where you're going to be drafting a safety in the 7th round and hope that he'll be able to start because you don't have the depth there. This
Yeah.
isn't a situation like that at all. That's what made this draft so memorable to me.
Mm-hmm.
But
Uh,
that's all I have for this week. Do you have
what
anything else that you'd like to add?
I got one more question for you, Adam.
All right.
Let's compare last year's and just really quick like here. Last year we had two first round picks in Matt Khalil and Harrison Smith. And
Right.
this year we had three first round picks, Sharif Floyd, Xavier Rhodes, and Cordell Patterson. Which do you think Vikings fans are going to look back at and go, that was the better first round?
Um, I still think they should look back on last year's because they needed that bookend with Khalil. He filled a huge need, and Harrison Smith is one of those players that I think will be a Viking for a long time, and he'll just build as a cornerstone in that secondary.
Hmm.
So I'm still gonna say that last year's draft to me was just fantastic.
I'm going to look at this year and I'm going to go that fans are going to look back and go, I can't believe that Sharif fell to us the way he did in the draft. And they're going to go, that was a really smart move by the team to move up back into the first round and draft Patterson. And they're going to go, Xavier was a guy that maybe wasn't on a lot of people's radar at the time, and maybe didn't get as much coverage as what the other two guys are getting right now. But your people are going to go, he ended up being a really darn good player for the Vikings, too. And I think it's going to make this year's first round pick something special, and three players that we're going to be talking about for a long time in Minnesota.
All right. I'd like to say one more quick thing about Sharif Floyd because I was not as high on him going into the draft. I had several other defensive tackles rated above him, like Sheldon Richardson and Starr from Utah. And I thought that he would go earlier than the Vikings pick, but I didn't see it as being as early as most projected.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it was still a value pick because the Vikings probably had him valued higher than where they took him. But I don't see him being as extreme as a value pick as looking to say, okay, he should have been number 3 to the Raiders. I can't believe he fell all the way. I just don't see that as being it. But now that the draft's over, we can judge the players based completely on their own merits. We know who's on the team.
Mm-hmm.
We know what position they play. We know where to watch for them. We know their Twitter handles so we can send them criticizing messages when they mess up. We know all this stuff now.
Yeah, and that's the fun part about where we're at now, is like you said, I could care less who was drafted in the first round or the seventh round. You got a
Exactly.
Vikings jersey with your name on the back of it and your number on the front of it. Let's see what you can do out there on the practice field and preseason, and let's see who can win a spot on the Vikings 53. And this is going to be fun. I think we're in store for a fun 2013 season.
Absolutely. Vikings fans should just sit back and enjoy the ride.
Hmm.
And in closing, I'd like to remind everyone to stay classy, Minnesota.